Fine. We're on, okay. Okay, let's, the first meeting of the new year, I guess you can call this, Plant and Equipment, Tuesday, January 2nd, at 2 PM. We'll call the meeting to order. Are there any public on the line? I don't see any. No public here. Any committee comments? Hearing none, we'll move right on to the important issues.
That's
The
right.
transmission pipeline replacement update.
All right, so the notice inviting bids for the project was published in the Daily Independent on December 1st and December 8th. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting and job walk on December 14th, and we had 8 prime contractors attend that meeting, which was really good for us. Questions from bidders are due by the end of the day on January 11th. And bids are due by Thursday, January 14th at 11 a.m. And I will let Ty give you an update on the financing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've received both the presentation for the rating agency as well as a copy of the preliminary official statement. So we are reviewing those. I expect we'll have a call with the community team this week to discuss, to go over those, to finalize them. After those are finalized, we'll bring it to the board. I don't think we'll make the Monday meeting. Maybe we can try to put it on the workshop if we're far enough along. Otherwise, we may have to do a special meeting just for approving the financing. And then at that point, when we meet with the rating agencies and go forward.
Are we looking just for an individual bond for just this project, correct?
Well, because we're getting money from the state as well, the 3 million.
Right.
There should be funding to cover the balance for this Northwest transmission line as well as do the Springer line.
Okay,
So we're looking at 7.5 million.
okay. I'm hoping that the state still has their money available that they promised us. I've been reading more about the state finances, and I'm getting a little antsy about it, because they're so far in the hole, they're looking at where can they cut and where can they cut.
We've submitted all the paperwork.
So we're in line for, we
Right.
have to show that we're ready to break ground. Is that when the money will be due, or after the project's done?
No, I believe we receive it for the project.
For the project, once we have the bids in and we're all set up and planned, okay. Okay, Stan, I'm sorry.
Have you seen any discussion, or has there been any discussion regarding the interest rates going down, us getting a better loan rate?
They haven't said yet. I imagine they have fallen a little bit just with the Fed holding steady in anticipation that those rates, they're actually gonna start bringing the rates down. But we don't have anything finalized yet or.
Yeah, well, I didn't mean finalized, I mean, are
Right.
people optimistic that they are going down, or are they keeping us in the dark, or?
They think they're not gonna go up. They haven't said go down yet.
Yeah,
That's all they know.
yeah,
Did
okay.
announce some rate cuts or some proposals that the Fed's plan is to cut rates in 2024 over time, but rates will follow slowly after that, those cuts occur, because,
Yeah.
see if inflation comes back.
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering whether or not it would be beneficial to wait a month or two to see if the rates are going to be going down.
Yeah, I think
I mean, it's risky either way, but,
yeah, I think that goes with Ron's comment that like, if you wait too long, you might,
well,
that might not be good too, so I don't know. That's
yeah,
a tough
well,
one.
what I'm thinking is being a election year,
Yeah,
people are going to be motivated to continue to, at least to reduce the interest rates through at least November of next year.
yeah.
And if it looks like that is the case, and it's something that we ought to, not that I want to put it off that long, because we need to get it done, but
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
assume
know.
we would need to have funds in hand. When do we expect that would need to happen?
Well, we'd start with the project awarding in the February meeting and getting started soon thereafter, so we'd.
We'd need
The
funds
funds
fairly,
then.
we're gonna need funds fairly quickly
Yeah.
if we're gonna
Yeah.
proceed.
So when are the interest rates set? At the when they do this, they can fluctuate up until the time we say,
They fluctuate until you sell them.
until you sell them. Okay, until that point happens,
Right.
which is just whenever we make the final agreement to move on. So that could easily be a month away already.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
probably be first part of February
Yeah.
when that happens.
So I thought, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't put my trust in what the feds are going to do. I mean, I've seen them before say they're not going to raise rates, and then they're going to lower rates, and they go up 0.25%. So
Yeah,
it's-
you know, but there's been a lot of hate and discontent around the country about people not being able to buy houses because the interest rates are so high. And I think there is motivation, political motivation, if nothing else, and whatever works, I guess, as far as I'm concerned.
What are they now, 7%, 7.25%, I think? Aren't they somewhere in there for housing?
For home loans?
Yeah.
They've gotten under 9, or under 6, or 7 a little
They
bit.
just dropped below
Up a little
7.
bit, to-
Yeah,
believe
just
they're
below 7.
Yeah, wow.
High 6.
All
But I
right.
don't necessarily, I mean, estimates we got early were actually below that, weren't they?
Yeah, right now still around 4.5 for the bond
Yeah.
financing.
Well, that's better than 6 or
Yeah.
6.5, for darn sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that amount of money over that length of time, that's a lot of money.
We're looking 30 years?
30, maybe 35.
Okay, all right. Hang on, I'm just making a note here. All right, anything else on the transmission line? Are we fixed on calling it the Indian Creek Road Transmission Line now? Is that the proper terminology we want
That's
to use?
not the proper,
The official one we're using is Northwest Transmission Line.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's start putting that everywhere, because I know it's going to come up again. Yeah.
yeah,
Northwest-
I will change it for the next.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Next one.
I just
didn't
know for
even
some reason it
notice.
came up to, people were getting confused. All right, nothing else? We'll move on to the number 4, booster
The
station.
Booster Station project, yeah. We had some limited startup activities in December. Had some, the startup contractors out there on the 13th, and we discovered that we need to make some changes in the settings to the motor and pump controls. So there's been some RFIs, requests for information going back and forth between the contractor and Krieger and Stewart getting the right settings. So now we're waiting for the electricians to come back out and make those needed changes. And then they have to do the 2-day operational testing, the 7-day live testing. And once that's done, then the old boosters can be shut down and the demolition can start on the old booster stations. So we did get the asbestos and lead survey done that we needed to do for the demolition subcontractor. Of course, there was no lead or asbestos found in either of the buildings, so that is good to go.
So none of the problems were mechanical or anything, it's all in the electronics?
Yes, in the electronics
settings.
and the clay valve settings, things like
Okay.
that, yeah.
All right.
Can I ask you a quick question on the cost? I mean, I heard from Krieger and Stewart that this project is really close to the estimated cost. Is that correct? Within a couple of percent? Very
Yeah, I
little
think
amount?
the total change orders are slightly over 1%. It's not much.
So, I mean, what a tremendous,
We did get credit in one of those change
feather in the cap of the people who both estimated and did the construction and managed it. I mean, when was the last time you heard of a government contract that came in right at where it was estimated to be? That's pretty unheard of. So, once again, to the team,
But this is sort of a standard type development, it's not like a 50-mile pipeline that, you see
What are you
once in
saying,
100
Stan?
years. It's a fairly straightforward thing.
I've managed-
So I agree with you that, yeah, it's great and it's not usual.
I had a bathroom project in CE that cost us $280,000 for a bathroom about the size of those bathrooms. So that was $120,000 over budget. So I've seen little projects and big projects all go over budget, and I just think it's a credit to the team to.
Oh,
to-
absolutely.
To have done such a great job on it. That's a pretty big project,
It is more complicated than you think, Stan.
Yeah, so, I mean.
Well, and the length of time that it's taken
Yes.
also, that gives you more and more time to increase.
Yeah, that's
The
always worries me,
cost.
is the timing on things.
Yeah.
Costs begin to creep up before you have
Yeah.
materials that you need, yeah.
We had to wait a long time for the motor control center, like
No,
18
but,
months, I think.
But you were quoted a price on that fix.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it was the
It
type
was
of
just
thing,
a
yeah.
matter of having to wait for it.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing now. But I agree with George, good job on that. Now we just need to get it up and running and get that other one torn
Yep.
down. Yeah,
Hopefully they'll still be on track to get that done here by the end of the month.
okay, all right.
But we'll get an update on Wednesday.
Just think you have nothing to do after that for a while. I'm just kidding.
Until the Northwest
I
Transmission
know,
Line,
I
right?
know. Okay. Anything else on the booster pumps? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to arsenic treatment facility updates.
Jason's out today, so I got the latest from Ken. The plants are obviously still offline for the winter. They're reviewing prices right now for the new treatment media. We just got the latest one the end of last week. So Jason gets back and we'll all have a discussion on the price for the replacement media. And they're still planning to be sure to have both plants online for next pumping season. So.
And again, I commend on that as well because we keep up with our regular maintenance and planned maintenance. Because I sit back and worry, how old are those plants now? How old are, what, they were
They're about 12 years old.
12 years old. You begin to worry that.
2011 they were put
Yeah,
online.
Yeah, if you don't keep up with regular maintenance and planning for it, then all of a sudden you could have 12 years worth of maintenance to do. Because my general question was gonna be, what is the general condition? But for the years I've been here, I think you guys have handled things as they've,
Oh, they do.
you planned them to keep them going, yeah. So I appreciate that.
You know, it's a little bit like airplanes, private airplanes. You know, 100-hour inspections, you do your maintenance as you go, and you shouldn't expect any major issues at any time. So, yeah, I think you've done a good job of keeping track of
Yep.
where we are and what we're doing.
So they're both the plants are down now, right? Okay. Anything else? Stan? Anything? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to the cost operations impact of receiving imported water discussion only. Yeah, and I hate to talk about this all the time. But yeah, it's information that we're hoping, definitely what we get out of this is obviously information we're going to pass on to the committee that's working on our long-term impact for if this occurs.
Yeah, so I got a quick update. So I talked to Chuck Krieger this morning, based on our discussion, and he and I are going to go over what we think is a good approach to really sort of looking at the costs. And we have we have the spreadsheet. We're going to go over that, and then we're going to probably do about an hour telecom. It's not going to cost us anything with this other company. And we talked at length about Krieger and Stewart. Obviously, they're excellent at pricing out the projects that they manage or design. Some of the other interagency stuff, there may be some other expertise out there that we're going to look at. And if we find that is something worth looking into, we'll bring it to the board. But right now, we're just in the exploratory phase of looking at how we can best do cost estimates on a lot of this stuff that related to the pipeline project. And I guess I'll further that by saying I did a little bit of research, and I'm pretty sure that the comments on the preliminary design review are in fact publicly available. And therefore, one of the other things we got to start looking at is, what impacts might come, based on the letter we got from State Water Resources Control Board, correct?
Darn, I wanted to say that so she know I got it right finally.
Yeah, see if I get it right
Yes,
this
that's
time.
it, State Water Resource
Yeah.
Control Board.
Yeah, and so, those are things that, and the board needs to discuss whether that's something that we need to sort of push back to the GA and say, hey, if you're going to bring this pipeline and it's going to cause all these modifications, who's paying for that?
Yeah, and yeah, it's all part of it. Did you saw the list?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming that you're talking to Krieger and Stewart.
Right.
Including all those comments from DWR.
That's what I was going to ask,
Yeah.
including all these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have we had any feedback from, there was, the provost and Pritchard was on the primary addressee. So I'm assuming that this information has gotten back to the GA on what the State Water Resources Control Board was saying. Have we had any feedback from the GA, Stetson et al. Or whatever?
I have a staff call with them this week, and I was gonna bring the letter up and say, just ask them, what their thoughts were and how they were gonna incorporate that in design, and were they intending to pay for these? At least start that in the staff call, to see where that goes.
Yeah, I guess I would have liked to have seen the State Water Resources Control Board put some money from the GA other than Provost and Pritchard on distribution of that letter, since in theory, the GA is responsible for
I'm sure,
that.
I'm sure it went to them. If it went to Provost, you know it went to
They
them.
work with Stetson.
They work
so-
with Stetson from Stetson.
Meetings that we had in the past with the Division of Drinking Water
Yeah.
included us and Stetson and Provost Tim Pritchard and the GM from, Carol from the GA, so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, when
Nobody was
when I looked, I didn't see Carol on there.
Well, I don't know about who
She
was
wasn't
copied on the
copied
letter,
on the email,
but she was
I'll
part of
make
our
sure I-
meetings.
I did forget your comment to forward it to her.
Yeah.
I'll forward it to her after the
Yeah.
meetings today.
Okay.
Two things about all this is number one is, and I think we've already discussed this before, because of all if this pipeline connected to us, and I'm saying a big if, that
Thank you.
there's a good amount of money that needed to be spent within our own system to handle it, not including this. So, and I think my guesstimate was about $25 million of modifications to our system. Now, if you add all this, and I mean, I'm just doing a wag on it, is I'm looking here probably another 15 or $20 million. So, and I know you guys are discussing that, but I think my biggest concern with this as well is the operation of this line. Because obviously, the Division of Drinking Water said that, and you even mentioned in your analysis, George, that it's going to have to be some company or some public utility that's going to be operating this thing under the requirements of the Division of Drinking Water. So, and we as a board have said, we don't want to operate this thing. And I don't know what AVIC has said to you, but I get the feeling they don't
AVIC
want to
does
operate
not
it.
want to operate it.
So if the GA decides they're going to operate this, then they're going to turn it into a whole water company, and which could be way more money than we would expect, way more money.
Well, see, in my mind, it goes back to, we're still trying to find the absolute scope of what the actual issues are.
Right.
Both from a capital standpoint, which is addressed by not DWR, but the Water Resources Control Board, and our concerns about the operations.
Right.
We still don't know totally down to, what level, 75%, 80%, 90% of what the scope, both capital-wise and operational is.
And
So
that's
we
what
need
we're
to
trying
keep,
to get.
pushing on it, and I think we maybe are making some progress, and I think it's good that George keeps, communicating with Stetson and Provost and Pritchard, so that we can get more accurate information, because till we know not necessarily exactly what the cost is going to be, but a lot closer than we do now, we can't make a good judgment.
We can't make an estimate of what the impact's going to be on our ratepayers. That's why
Right, exactly.
subcommittee and David and Mel need to get this information in their hands fairly quickly, because it's something that we want to know. Number one is capital cost. Number two is operational cost, which obviously could change drastically on this. So, and at some point, we're going to have to do like they do in most engineering projects. You're going to say, it's got to stop right here. Whatever information we have now here, we need to publish our best numbers so we can come up with an idea what our future looks like.
Right.
If this goes in.
Right.
And that's a big if, of course.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I guess we're getting closer. I know that we keep massaging the numbers and getting more information, and
I think we're getting more information, we just don't know how far we are.
Yeah.
I mean, may I ask, George, are we getting more cooperation out of the GA's legal people so that they're willing to even talk to us at this point?
In limited cases, yes. They at least gave me, and I sent you guys an email on this, sort of their version of what they thought costs were. I think they were relatively simplistic, but at least we have a better understanding of how they view the world. I think there were a lot of things that were missing. None of the costs associated with what was in that letter were there. The assumption was that I don't believe the cost of water was included because it wasn't known. So there were a lot of things that weren't known. And even with that simplistic thing, there were some pretty significant numbers that a range of costs that you know, we're gonna
Right.
impact our customers. So we, you know, we can fairly confidently say at this point in time that, you know, like you're, you know, it's, I've heard people say $10 or $15 is a significant rate increase. I can think we can say with confidence that the pipeline comes, those are gonna be relatively very low numbers compared to what we're gonna see from the pipeline. You know, I would think it would be probably, the floor is probably somewhere around 40 to 50, and that's if everything went perfect and they got 100% financing for everything and all the money they asked for comes in, and, you know.
Not counting what's going to go on your property tax bill.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
so I mean, so there's
yeah.
we're
I've
approaching
mixed
a floor
emotions
that's
about
still
that.
even pretty high.
Are they continuing to push to try to get AVEC to give them numbers?
Yeah, they're, apparently they're in negotiations with AVEC and that's gonna be a big question mark. Like I have, talked with AVEC and the GA is getting them to give them numbers, and that won't include operation or any of the pipeline, but it'll just be sort of a cost per acre foot. And I really have no idea what, you know, just the basic cost of the water, you know, shipped through AVEC is gonna be.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's,
Well, yeah, I guess just speaking for myself, I won't believe, not because I think they're lying to us, but any number that the GA gives us without having reference documentation from AVEC, my tendency is going to be, I'm not going to believe it.
Well, let's keep it.
We need to have AVEC blessed numbers.
I always want to make sure we think about two numbers. One is the capital cost of this thing. And according to Phil Hall, that he says that whatever they can't get to be paid for by the government, whatever government, I mean, is going to be rolled up into a bond issue on our property tax. Okay? And that could be anywhere from $25 to $50 million. And if you do the math for that, and Ty can correct me, over 30 years, you're looking somewhere between $300 to $600 per year on your property tax bill. Okay, then there's the other cost, which has operational costs. And that's why I'm not buying the idea of $15-20 per month per customer, because I still look at the operating costs, and now included with this maybe, at easily $11 million a year. Easily $11 million a year. Now you have to figure that who's paying that? Well, mostly it's going to be the water district. So if you put that number in, you can't, because what's being said now at City Hall from Ron Strand is, what they're going to do will cost the ratepayers nothing. They would see no increase whatsoever on their bills. That's what Ron Strand is saying. He's assuring them there'll be nothing that'll be added to any of the bills for the water district. And I'm saying, well, who's going to pay all these operating costs then? So and George is right, that's the mindset they have. And that's why we want to put our numbers together so we can look at it. Right. Now, granted, $11 million will be shared by other pumpers, you know, but we're going to be the bulk of it. What are we now? 90% of the money, over 100% of the money to make practically, about 90 probably. Yeah.
Well, see, that is the other big hitch, is who besides us is going to be using it. I'm convinced that we're not going to need
I am too.
more than a small percentage of what it is.
So who pays for everything?
And so, anyway, George has got obviously
You got a big job.
a big job, and he's pushing it, and I appreciate all of his efforts.
I don't want to be optimistic about the cost, though. I want to be very realistic as best we can and err on the high side, because if we have to sit here at the district and make predictions of what we might look like in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's important that we know what that number looks like. And I think you're going to see more action, hopefully, out of Dave and Mel's committee, as they're just waiting for numbers. So you guys can sit down and put everything together.
you know, and that's what Krieger and Stewart are gonna have this conference call with this company that really, you know, that's all they do. They don't do engineering design. They don't do anything. Their whole business model is estimating interagencies, where multiple agencies are building projects together and figuring out what the costs are and how they get divided up and how they get apportioned to various entities. And so we're gonna explore whether that's value added for us to have that kind of expertise.
Well, and we do also, like I think you pointed out in one of your emails, maybe doing ground injection and then just pulling out what we need when we need it, as an alternative, might be better for us, and I'm not sure it's better for anybody else, but
Yeah, and that's really centered around the fact that, like, so you have this huge basin, and if you bring a pipeline only to us, how do you really encompass growth in the rest of the basin? Because the only way to encompass growth is that we take more water out of the pipeline when somebody else is pumping more water out of the ground somewhere else in the basin. It's a huge basin, and so it really limits almost the way the basin can grow if we're the only people that can offset whatever that number ends up being. And I don't think that's a good model for long-term sustainability, which is why I think there should be at least some form of injection if you have imported water at all.
well, see, in my mind, this is, we've sort of tried to keep the adjudication independent of the pipeline, as a system engineer, so you gotta look at the big picture and see how everything works together.
Yeah.
And I'm a little concerned that we probably need to do more of that and tie what we're doing with the adjudication, with the pipeline and the GA. I mean, those are the three basic elements in my mind that need to get pulled together. So it's a big job.
I want to ask Renee something. This water from AVEC, which I assume is considered surface water now, is that what you were saying? And what I want to know is this, is that if that doesn't come directly into our system, how does all this stuff apply? In other words, if this was going to be $15 million, and they could say, we can inject it for 10 million, do you still have to abide by this? I'm talking about our end, not the line itself.
That I'm not sure, but I think if you inject it and you're pulling it out somewhere else, or at
Right.
least there's a travel time of
Right, travel time,
6
yeah.
months or something,
You're right.
then it's considered groundwater.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
surface water anymore.
That's important for us to know.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
and that was why I brought
Yeah.
that up originally, is the impression I got that it's only applicable if we take the water
Into our
directly from
system.
AGVIC and pump it directly into
Because
our
this
system.
here, this is not just the cost of building what's required for this. Someone's gonna have to maintain this stuff. And whether that's maintained as part of the pipeline or part of the water district, you see what we're getting at here? Was it part of the pipeline, part of the water district?
And that,
Yeah.
I think it's important for George to be discussing with Krieger and Stewart, not necessarily along with the GA.
Right.
But we need to know what our position is relative to
Yes.
all the various options.
Because if we're gonna put
Because
our foot,
GA is not going to care about that.
yeah, if we're gonna put our foot down and say, we are not gonna allow this to come into our system, we have to say, here's why.
Yeah.
Because of this cost plus the operational costs, and we'd have to be licensed, I think licensed is the wrong thing, permitted to handle surface water, which changes training, everything throughout our district changes. And we'd say, no, we're not gonna let that happen. So you as a GA, if you're gonna take this water,
Yeah.
you need to put it back in the ground.
Yeah.
And well, I'll say, and I want to preface this comment with, I can't imagine they would send us water that was not in compliance with regulations. However, when you read that letter and they talk about the water that comes to boron and the high THHM levels that they've seen there, that's a significant thing for us, because these are new, I will call it new issues that I don't think we've had to deal with before. We've had historically low THHM levels. We've had very little PFAS issues. And I think both of those, I don't know if they mentioned PFAS in the letter, but I think that's another one that's coming up. And I think we need to be really thoughtful in the way we, talk about it. We're not saying that they're going to send us water that's
No, I
not
don't
to
think
some
we are.
standard, but you do read in that letter, and it says, the water they're delivering to boron has significantly higher levels of some of these contaminants, and those standards go down, and there's a difference between, so there are two types of standards. There are the legal limits, and there are agencies out there that publish what they call public health limits that are oftentimes much, much lower, but probably not practically achievable from a cost standpoint. And so you start to introduce, contaminants that are well within the legal limits, but certainly are an increase historically versus what we see from public
keep
health
in
stuff, you
mind,
could get a lot of pushback on that.
At this particular point, all we know is if this happens like this and it comes into our system, this is a drastic change to the way that we operate here, a huge change.
Yes.
So it just doesn't say, here's the water, even if they're doing the treating. It still comes in here, it changes the whole way we operate. And we have to take that into account, and I agree with Stan. I think at some point, from the equipment end of this thing and how this hooks to us, that we have to come out as a board and say, we don't want this to happen here, and here's why. Because we're talking about I can't imagine, new training, new positions, new equipment, I can go down the line about that. I know, when I read this, I go, oh, man. So I know where I stand on it, but I think I agree with Stan. If we, as a board, say, no, we're not going to allow it to tie into our system, then we have to be able to say, the alternative is this, and here's why. And so we need to go there. Anyway, that's it, unless, we're going to continue this conversation.
No, I think it was productive and good conversation
Yes.
to bring us stuff.
And I don't mind keeping this on this particular plant and equipment committee either, because it is going to be plant and equipment that could be a huge cost, and operations at some time. But I want to get this stuff into the committee. I want them to start coming out with some estimates and something for publication on if this happens, here's what it's going to cost us, right down to the ratepayers. And I think we're getting closer, but I think we need to do it I'm guessing within the next 6 months or so. Have enough information to publish something, at least that. All right, anything else? All right, future agenda items, anybody?
Excuse me. I noticed, I don't remember for sure. I thought we used to talk about the consolidation during this.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
And I know we sort of put one of our consolidations on hold, but we didn't, and as far as I'm concerned, it's not dead. It's a matter of finding out from the state, what do we need to do to get them to fund it totally? They've got a current position that, but quite frankly, my feeling is it is the responsibility of the state to totally fund it.
Yeah,
My reading of Prop 218 says we cannot legally use our funds for anything other than maintaining our existing
right.
infrastructure and buying and distributing water.
You're right.
And so it's a state law. So my feeling is the state is going to have to reconcile, okay, guys, what do you want? What are you going to do if the water in that particular area goes, totally dry or totally contaminated,
Job for the GA. They're the ones who are saying if we have to connect to the system, maybe these people ought to go to them. Where there was Homestead.
Can I give you an update?
Yeah.
Y'all don't breathe.
The two of them
Take a
were
breath.
Dune 3 and.
Dune 3 is probably the one you're talking about. We have not had a meeting on Dune 3 in a couple months.
Okay.
So I expect to have one this month.
All right.
And we'll get an update on where they're going to circle back to now and what's
Okay.
going to happen next. Hometown, we're at the end of getting all the paperwork together to get it submitted.
Okay.
I finished up the draft engineering report. I've got to go back and update one of the environmental documents. I'll be working directly with the state now on that. So maybe in the February meeting, I can stick it on there if I've got some updates for you
So it's
guys.
all going to be, it's all about the money is what it's going to be.
Yes.
And I think the point about it is if the state can't pay for it, if they're saying they can't pay us, then I think we said this before, then we would encourage these two to go over to make an appeal to the GA. Because that's part of what they want to do.
I think it's a matter of getting the correct language in the agreements that Jim's okay
that
with.
Jim's-
That's
okay.
the
All right.
thing.
All right.
So
So-
I'll make a comment as well. I'm not sure if you guys saw this in the GA staff report, but they believe they're going to get some funding for some consolidation as well. I think it was something in the order of $2 million. And obviously, the only place really to consolidate is with us. So this,
They've already got 3 million.
Huh?
They already got 3. They got 3
It was
million for
grant money,
consolidation.
wasn't it,
Yeah.
that they were
They got
talking about?
For consolidation.
So I guess my question is would we work with the GA to try to implement that grant money or to use it to help us maybe if we're doing these other consolidations and there was a cost overrun, could we have an agreement where?
Well, and that was the issue. It was the overrun. The state,
Yeah.
I believe, was willing to pay the baseline estimated cost, it was the cost overrun.
No,
wasn't it?
they weren't even guaranteeing the money at this point. The language is such that when you're done, we may or may not even have the money for
Right.
it, more or less an overrun.
The district would be on the hook if the state
State
couldn't
doesn't have
fund
any
it.
money.
Yeah, so, and Jim was like, no, we're not going for
Oh,
that.
See,
Yeah.
that was I guess.
There were several
I must have gone to
issues.
sleep in part
Yeah,
of
I
the
think you were
meeting.
sleeping over there. I'm not sure. No, but
Well, that's, you know.
I know,
yeah.
yeah, got you. Put electric thing in his
Oh, and
chair.
that's utterly ridiculous.
Yes.
And I think it had to do with the fact it was they were trying to move things along quickly. They had a pot of funds for expedited projects, and they were trying to get the Dune 3-1 into that. But because they were unwilling to change any of the language in the agreement, we couldn't go that route.
I
So
see.
now
So
we're got to go back to the regular
Route.
route that takes longer, and they should be willing to make some changes in the agreement language.
So it's not dead in the water.
No,
It's
it's
just
not
we're
dead at
getting,
all.
we're
Okay.
delayed.
No.
Okay, good.
See, and I hadn't heard anything since we said that we were not going to be on the hook.
Yeah, it's
you know,
because we haven't had any meetings, that's
Because
why.
we should.
Right, yeah, with the holidays and this
So
all
that we
happening,
need to
yeah.
keep the dialogue going. And by the way, George, I in particular am not unwilling to talk to the GAA about using any grant money they may have. It's in everybody's best interest, as far as I'm concerned, to get those consolidations moving. The state wants it, the people obviously want it, and it doesn't hurt us at all. It maybe helps us a little.
I'm gonna
So-
ask one question. I need to cut the meeting short because we have David here and I know he's on his. What was the cost on the Dune 3? Do you remember roughly? What's it?
It was a little over $2 million.
I'd say 2-point-something million.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
Well, that's real money.
I know, it's real money.
You
but
know,
that's what
and
it is.
even the over spend or whatever could be real money, depending upon, but I just wanted to make sure, that was why I say.
I'm glad you
in terms of
asked about
future
that.
Items, we want to make sure that it continues to be on some list so that we continue to discuss it and we continue to
Let's add
track
it,
the
let's add it to the
progress.
agenda then. Just put it as.
Staff continues to be involved.
Yes,
so
I realize that.
As soon
but-
as I have something,
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have a meeting this month.
Yeah.
And I know I was
Not a-
working hard at the end of the year to get the
Yeah, we're not
hometown stuff
implying
in,
that you're
so.
not. It just, if
Yeah.
it's here and it's updated, then it's boom.
Yeah, I
If there's no
can,
update,
I
there's no
can
update.
put it on there for next month, because
Yeah,
probably
just
should
list
have
it so we know
something.
where we are. I thank you for that. All right, if that's it.
That was all I had.
Anything else? With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. And my first meeting was 7 minutes over, 2:37.
I'd blame it on the new general manager.
Not a